point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 419th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the astonishing Tom Fennell.
Right now, it's the astonished.
You're supposed to say in the flesh, Tom.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. There you go. Okay. These what we're presenting here is a series of news items that have come up in the last week, starting on the 13th of May and going up to Wednesday, the 19th of May. And these are all things that were found at my blog. You know, I do my blog. I get about 10 to 15 news items every day. Most days it's 15, and post a synopsis of each with a link to the original article so that people visiting the blog can find out what's going on in energy every day.
Well, some of those are worth pursuing. Some of them are definitely worth following, almost mandatory.
The material that Tom and I are talking about is posted, or access to the material is posted online wherever you have found this show at BCTV in Brattleboro or YouTube or wherever. You should be able to find links, a link to the material that Tom and I use as it appears online, and also you should be able to download a copy of it. So we're starting on the 13th of May, and Tom, do you have more to say before we go to this picture of groundwater and fracking and all that?
No, this is the next thing we're going to talk about. It's a picture of fracking.
It sure is. Now, this particular picture is a courtesy of NASA, and I always think of NASA as being out in space, but here it's underground. And we have an item here from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title for this, Tom?
Want a heart attack? Move closer to a natural gas fracking site.
Yeah. Fracking might not be good for your heart. The Journal of Environmental Research published a study that found middle-aged men, I'm too old to be middle-aged, I'm out of the woods on this one, living near fracking sites in Pennsylvania were more than 5% more likely to die of a heart attack than their counterparts where fracking is banned.
But that's a statistical thing. It's not necessarily cause and effect, but where there's smoke, there's fire.
That's what they say. And, you know, this is something that is not really not good for people. And, you know,
a quick note on this. Air pollution has long been linked with poor cardiovascular health.
Yes.
But this is the first study to look at this from the standpoint of fracking.
Yeah. And it's not a surprise to me because the amount of methane that's lost from these sites is far, far greater than what the fracking industry has been willing to admit.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, they're playing games, really.
Well, yeah, I suppose they are. Regrettably, that's probably true.
I mean, they don't want anything to interfere with their profits, and they'll lie, cheat, and steal to keep them.
Yeah, lie, cheat, steal, and kill. People are dying. You know, I mean, let's get real, guys, and start taking responsibility for the things that we do.
Well, in any case, what they did in this particular case here, they looked at Pennsylvania fracking counties,
right,
and compared them to similar counties in New York.
Right.
I think it's a fair way to do it.
Yeah. And by the way, I said people should take responsibility for the things that they do. I want everybody to understand that is what I said, but please don't hold me to that standard. Okay.
Let's move on here.
Okay, let's move on. We've got a picture of a nice little town in Ohio. This is Cheshire, Ohio.
Cheshire.
Cheshire. Okay, this is Cheshire, Ohio.
I'm only kidding.
I know you are. And what do we have? This is from the BBC. What do you have for a title?
The strange deal that created a ghost town.
It created a ghost town. That was
This is a long and interesting article with a lot of pictures. So if you have some time, look it up.
It is an interesting article. That picture, by the way, is a picture of Cheshire, Ohio.
Yeah, but it's a couple of years old.
Well, a few years old, but it was it had a population of about, I don't know, 200, 300, a little over 300 at the time this picture was taken. Not very many people. There still is a post office there, by the way. I looked it up.
Yeah, there's still a few people live there.
There are a few.
Including the guy that wrote the article.
Yeah. And well, let me read the synopsis. The J.M. Gavin coal-burning power station is the 7th largest emitter of CO2 of all power stations in the United States.
That's significant.
It is, and it's right next to this little town. In 2019, it emitted 12.9 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The power plant's emissions are also responsible for the demise of the entire community of Cheshire, Ohio. And
Cheshire is on the Ohio River, right near Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay, it's almost in West Virginia. And in 2002, due to residents' complaints about air pollution, the plant's owner agreed to buy the entire town for $20 million.
Yeah.
The majority of its residents have since moved away.
Yeah.
Now, they sold the plant. AEP sold the plant in 2017. The plant is still operating.
Yes, still emitting the pollution.
And there's coal ash waste and ponds that discharge into local waterways is still an unresolved issue.
And what they had was they had a pair of air pollution control devices, one of which, as I recall, was a scrubber. And when they turned them both on, instead of having sulfur dioxide in the air, they had sulfur trioxide, which meant that instead of
bad.
Sulfurous acid, H2SO3, is bad enough. You know, it'll dissolve marble statues and things like that. But H2SO4, that is sulfuric acid. That is nasty stuff. I've handled this stuff. You do not want to get that on you, and it's coming out of the plant into the air.
Bingo.
And of course, the people who were local were just having a terrible time. But now they've moved away, a lot of them, and the plant is emitting stuff that is just
still doing it.
It's just falling a little farther from home. So it means that the people are exposed to lower amounts of it. But it's not good. This is not good. This is not a good way to do things. So anyway, we should probably go on.
Yeah, let's move on. We got a nice picture of a Bitcoin.
And by the way, I should explain something here. It says on the caption here, Bitcoin does not actually have physical reality. You're looking at a Bitcoin, which this young lady is holding, which does have physical reality, but it's not the actual Bitcoin.
That's correct.
It's just a physical object that represents it.
I call it a token.
It's a token. And so somebody might
buy those things, but they're worthless.
Oh, man. The Bitcoins that they represent, though, are worth a lot of money. And
well, we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
That's virtual currency.
Virtual currency. Yeah. And
I'll read what the article says.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tesla suspends Bitcoin vehicle purchases due to impacts of mining and transactions on the environment. That's the Tesla cars.
Yeah.
You can't buy a Tesla car anymore with Bitcoin.
You could at one point.
Until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. In the past, Tesla had accepted Bitcoin as payment for cars, but Elon Musk has tweeted that Tesla suspended the use of Bitcoin for vehicle purchases. He said the reason was Bitcoin's growing dependence on energy from fossil fuels.
I'll mention that in a second.
Go ahead.
There's good links in that article about Bitcoin, by the way. Worth following up.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Virtual Bitcoin. They're virtual, okay? And they're, in quotes, mined, which means they're created using special computers called miners.
Yeah.
Which employ a complicated algorithm called a blockchain. And each coin, and that's in quotes, takes about 10 minutes to mine. So in 2010, when it started, the Bitcoin was worth about 40 cents. In 2011, Bitcoins reached a value of $1 for the first time ever. And as of last Sunday, just less than a week ago, one Bitcoin was worth $45,538.16.
And you know, Tom, that is down badly from what it was only a few weeks earlier, because it went over $60,000.
Went over 60,000.
Yeah.
And it used to be 40 cents.
And it used to be 40 cents. Now, one of the things here is people who are attracted to cryptocurrency and local currency and things like that will look at the Fed, which is I'm saying in quotes backing, it's balancing. I think is probably a better term. The U.S. currency, and the Fed doesn't. The U.S. currency is not backed by anything really. It's backed by the
promises.
It's backed by the popular desire to have money.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the Fed can adjust the value of our money. It can adjust the rate of inflation by increasing or reducing the money supply. And this has profound effects.
It does regularly, really.
It does it all the time. Now, it does that, and that combined with the people having a desire for money is what keeps the money at approximately the same kind of value. These Bitcoins don't have anybody regulating them. If Bitcoin if the world decides that these things don't have any value, the value going to zero is not going to be stopped by anybody stepping in and saying, we've got to save people's finances here. We're going to protect them. Nobody's going to protect
apparently
them.
Some people think they're worth something. $45,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
Well, there's a couple of things about them, and one of them is that you can do this is cryptocurrency. You can do crypto transactions.
Well, it's a good way to hide money.
It's a good way to hide money, and it's a good way to launder money.
Yeah,
and basically,
it means the same thing.
Yeah, and it basically is a legal way to handle something that has value, so that you can do something that's not illegal if that's what you want to do.
Without paying a government a tax on that.
Yeah,
money.
you can do all kinds of nasty things with this, and a number of countries have said no, we're not going to allow this. It's a Ponzi scheme is one of the reasons. The government, not the government, the head bank of China, I think it was yesterday or the day before, put out an order to the Chinese bank saying that they should avoid owning these things if they possibly can. They should strenuously avoid owning them, which means I think if they foreclose and they get some, they can own them as long as it takes to get rid of them. But this is something that Tesla, what they did was they said, you know what? The people who are creating these things are using huge amounts of energy to create something that has no real value. But the energy that they're using for this, a lot of it comes from fossil fuels, which means
it's real energy.
It's real energy, and it's creating real emissions to produce something that doesn't have real value. Anyway, that's my opinion. Yeah.
Interesting way of looking at it.
Okay, we should probably move on, Tom.
We should. We got an interesting picture of Paris.
Paris. You know, I went to Europe in 1962. I think Paris is one of the places I remember best.
Never been there.
Well, it's worth a visit if you happen to be in the neighborhood. That's the best I can say, because I'm not putting it down. It's a beautiful city. It's got a lot of attractions. It's just that I don't travel much. So people who love to travel, go to Paris. It's a great place. This is from the BBC.
Paris seeks to ban through traffic in the city center by 2022.
By 2022?
That's not a bad idea.
That's not that far away.
No, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, a plan to drastically reduce car traffic in the center of the French capital, Paris, by 2022 has been put forward by the city council. The scheme would ban through traffic in 4 central districts, giving priority instead to cyclists, pedestrians, and public transportation system, which means it's not banning all traffic. It's just banning the traffic that is just going through. You know, if you have to get to an address, you can do it.
Well, residents and businesses in the area will still be allowed to drive in the central area.
Right.
But through traffic will be banned.
Yep.
And they say it's going to result in less polluted, greener, more peaceful, and safer city.
I think they're absolutely right in that.
I totally agree.
Okay. Let's go. Let's go to the next one. This is an interesting map.
A Colonial Pipeline system.
Yeah, and I want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, when we talked about the Colonial Pipeline the last time, I said Linden, New Jersey, the terminus is in southern New Jersey. And you can see, looking at the map, that's what they say it is. Tom said, no, Linden is opposite New York. And when I saw this map, I thought, I'm going to check and find out who's right. Is Colonial Pipeline System correct about where its terminal site is, or is Tom Fennell? And it turns out, guess what? It's Tom Fennell. No wonder they had problems. They don't even know where their infrastructure is.
Well, Linden is about 10 miles south of Newark. And in Linden, and the article didn't say this, but there's this huge Exxon Bayway refinery.
Yeah.
It is huge. Just drive along in it for miles and miles and miles. It goes on. And that's actually in Linden.
Okay. So this is from Clean.
That's probably where this pipeline is actually going.
Oh, yeah. So it isn't going to Linden in southern New Jersey because there ain't no Linden there.
It's going to the town of Linden, which is, 10 miles
opposite New York. Okay, this is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
An 8th grader could have hacked the Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah, its owners should not have been surprised that the Colonial Pipeline was hacked. An outside audit of its cyber attack defenses delivered to the company more than 3 years ago described quote, atrocious, end quote, information management practices and, quote, a patchwork of poorly connected and secured systems, end quote. And by the way, after this, they did apparently pay they
paid ransom.
Yeah, in Bitcoin. They paid
They paid Bitcoins?
They paid in Bitcoin. Yeah. And they paid Bitcoin that at the time they paid was worth $5 million, but now it's closer to 4. And I want to point out here that any 8th grader who happens to be listening to this and thinks, wow, I could have hacked that. Maybe I could have picked up $5 million. I wouldn't want to be an 8th grader who hacked this because it would give somebody a $5 million reason to find you. I don't think this is not something that, I did some stupid things when I was in 8th grade. I was not stupid enough to do this.
Well, this pipeline is 5,500 miles.
Yeah.
It's the largest system for refined oil products in the U.S.
Yes.
It can carry 3 million barrels of fuel per day.
Yes.
Now, it restarted operations last Wednesday. That's a week ago. As of this Monday, it's still not yet fully operational.
Yeah, and the reason they didn't shut down the pipeline, what they shut down was the auditing system. They didn't know who to charge money to for the oil that was moving through.
Little byline here. Koch Industries currently owns the largest stake.
Yeah, well, Koch Industries is
here we go.
I don't know. Anyway, we should move on. Our next item is from BBC, and we have a really weird picture. This is smoke from a pyrocumulonimbus cloud.
Whatever the heck that is.
Okay, what do you have for a title?
The most intense firestorms in the world.
When a wildfire reaches epic proportions, it changes everything around it, even creating its own weather. A pyrocumulonimbus, or pyro-CB, is a thunderstorm generated by a fire. So this is a rising column of air from a fire that creates positive feedback loops, which means that the result of the thing makes the situation worse, with winds, lightning, and sometimes deadly downdrafts that spread the fire outwards.
Not a good thing.
This is not good. This is not good. By the way, a positive feedback loop intensifies it. A negative feedback loop makes it less intense.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a long article with a lot of pictures, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it is indeed.
And by the way, for what it's worth, there's a big fire burning near Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
I just heard that on the news, so I just
the West is back to this super bad drought thing. We're going to see more of that. It's just going to, you can't have a drought like the ones that they've been having without having really, really bad fires. Okay, we should probably go on, Tom.
Well, it says extreme wildfires can affect the climate, and climate change can cause more extreme wildfires.
Yep.
That's a feedback loop.
That is a feedback loop. Okay, our next item is from MSN, which was...
What is that? What's that funny looking thing?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's a whole bunch of guys in a tall building smoking cigars. Yeah, I think so. That is a nuclear power plant.
It looks like it to me.
Yeah, and you can see the containment domes over on the left.
Well, just so that you don't confuse people, that's not pollution coming out of there.
Yeah, that's steam. Those are cooling towers, and it's not steam actually; it's water vapor that has condensed. But the cooling towers cool. 2/3 of the energy from the nuclear reactors is not made into electricity. It's just heat that has to be got rid of somehow.
Yep.
And in this particular case, this plant is on water, so it can be cooled with the water, which is the most efficient way to cool it. But it needed 2 cooling towers because the water might not be enough in the summer when it's warm. So this is probably a summer shot of this particular system. And what do you have for a title? This is from MSN, which means Microsoft News.
Does nuclear power really keep the lights on?
The nuclear industry is fond of telling us the sun does not always shine and the wind does not always blow. But things are a bit more complicated than that. Advances in renewable energy and storage mean that baseload power provided by nuclear reactors is no longer needed.
Say that again. That's an interesting statement.
Baseload power is not really needed anymore. And it's an interesting thing. Excuse me. If you consider sun, wind, hydro, batteries, just consider those 4. We could get into a broader system that would be far more complicated. But if you just consider those systems, the sun doesn't always shine in any given place, but we know when it's going to shine, and we know usually a day or two in advance how much it's going to shine. The wind doesn't always blow in any given place, but it's always blowing somewhere. And it happens.
Sometimes these two things complement each other.
They do indeed. When you take hydro, you've got extra power, and when you've got batteries, and we're going to get into some interesting battery design, you can have, if you're built out properly, you can actually get 100% of your power from that combination. And there are places on Earth already that are doing that. They're actually
more.
What's that?
You're going to see more places.
You are indeed. There's more and more of them. And
nuclear is diminishing because it's high cost.
It's high costs. Now, if you
large-scale batteries and pump storage can offset whatever intermittency that wind and solar have.
That's right. And let's consider the other side of this. I'm going to say something that people will say, what? No, that's not possible. But what I'm going to say is this, and I can prove it. You cannot provide for the demand on a grid with just baseload power. It cannot be done. What do you think of that, Tom?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what you actually mean by that.
If you want to design a grid, you cannot provide just baseload power and have that grid operate because the demand for power is variable.
There are times a day when people are going to use more power than that.
That's right. And the problem is baseload power is not flexible. Demand is all over the map. So you need something that's flexible. So if you're dependent on baseload power, which really only provides the base load, which is the least load that you'll have in the course of a year. If you're going to do that,
Yankee, that rarely changed the amount of electricity it was.
Yeah, you need to have load following plants, which cost a lot more. You need to have peaker plants, which cost a lot more. And by the time you're all done, You cannot do it with just baseload power. It cannot be done. Okay. Unless you've got something more on that, I think we should go on. We're a little behind schedule.
I think we should too. We got a nice picture of what they tell me is California.
Does that look like California? California is so varied in its appearance. It's amazing. This is the same state that has giant redwoods and things like that. What do you have for?
Not in this picture, they don't.
No, not in this picture.
No,
what do you?
This is the southwest of California.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
U.S. West likely to have a tough 2021 due to drought.
Yeah,
and
you were just talking.
Already.
What's that?
It's happening right now as we speak.
Yeah, it is. U.S. officials expect climate-fueled heat and drought to drive a fire season in the West that is at least as bad as last year, which means dreadful. Projections are so bad that hatcheries in Northern California are trucking salmon to the ocean instead of releasing them into the dangerously low rivers with unsafely warm water.
I hope the salmon enjoy the ride.
Well, they wouldn't enjoy those rivers because they need a lot of oxygen, and warm water doesn't hold enough for them. Huh?
And the oxygen isn't there.
Yeah, because the water's warm. The warming of the waters drives the oxygen out. The fish die. There are fish that can survive in 100-degree Fahrenheit water, but not salmon.
Right.
And certainly, I don't think there's a single species of trout that would survive that kind of heat.
We're talking carp.
Well, carp might, yeah. A lot of minnows will. I know that golden shiners will. Okay, we should keep going on because we are.
It says that this year will be one of the 10 hottest years on record.
Yes.
And we're seeing a higher or an earlier level of risk than we've seen in the recent past.
Yep. Okay, we do have to move on, and we're going to see.
We got a nice picture of Ravenswood Generating Station,
which we have seen and talked about many times.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. This is from Queen's Daily Eagle. What do you have?
It's still there, but it's not running right now.
Yeah, it's out of service.
Ravenswood Generating Station is on track to become a renewable energy hub. Well, we've touched base on this in the past.
Yeah, we have. Ravenswood, well, there's a change in this, which is they're talking about getting the energy from upstate New York.
That question, I have a big question about that.
Okay. Ravenswood.
Where's it going to come from? Where in upstate New York?
Wind farms that are going up. They haven't gone up yet. Ravenswood Generating Station could become home to renewable energy transported from upstate New York by 2026, its owner announced. The proposed Catskills renewable program, obviously that's in the Catskills, would supply an estimated 15% of New York City's energy. So there you have it, Tom.
My only question is where are those wind farms going to be built?
Well, I think they're going to be built in the Catskills.
That's what it suggests.
Yeah. Okay, our next item, we have a crane in Spain.
The crane in Spain flies mainly over the plain.
Well, that doesn't look like a plane, does it? Well, anyway, this is from the BBC. I found this a fascinating article. This
is interesting. It's a lot of nice bird pictures in it.
Yeah, a lot of nice bird pictures.
Flying giant returning to Ireland after 300 years.
Giant birds. This is Big Bird in Flight.
It's a big bird.
Yeah, that have been a part of Irish folklore could be returning to the island after an absence of more than 300 years. There is a pair of cranes nesting in a re-wetted peat bog owned by the former peat producer Bord na Móna, and I'm sorry that I'm pronouncing that wrong. I don't know how to pronounce Irish properly.
No, that's probably pretty right.
Yeah.
That means turf board as opposed to surfboard.
It means turf board.
Yeah. And
okay.
Turf is what the Irish call peat.
Yes, and you know what? That makes sense to me because Bord na Móna I know as an energy producing company, but obviously it was harvesting peat. The peat harvest stopped here in January. Now, Bord na Móna is no longer harvesting peat anywhere in Ireland. They recognize the value of peat bogs in terms of climate change and things of that nature. So they are rebuilding them. And these cranes, how do you get to Ireland by accident? I don't know. But these cranes figured out that, yeah, here's a nice peat bog that we could settle down in, raise our kids. Yeah, okay. We are kind of on schedule. Do you have more on that?
Just that adult cranes stand at about 4 feet with a wingspan of more than 7 feet. So
These are big birds. They are big birds. Okay, our next item is from CNN, and we have a picture of
some heavy waves.
Heavy waves. They're not super heavy. What do you have for a title for this?
May 15th is the new unofficial start to the hurricane season.
Wow, this is climate change at work. Officially, the hurricane season starts on the 1st of June, but named tropical storms have formed earlier than that in the Atlantic every year for the past 6 years. The National Hurricane Center is now issuing their routine tropical weather outlook forecasts starting on the 15th of May rather than the 1st of June. I don't remember that they're extending them longer in the fall. Do you remember that, Tom?
I don't remember that, but the article did say that May 15 has already been the official start of the Pacific hurricane season.
Yeah.
And already this year, Tropical Storm Andres was named nearly a week ago.
Yes. And there's another one that's probably going to be named tomorrow, which is extra. It's extra tropical. So who knows what that's going to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. You have more?
They are a-changing.
They are indeed. Do you have more, or should we go on?
No, let's move on. We got a picture of, what is that thing?
It is a nodding donkey.
Aha, looks like a pump jack to me.
I think you might be right. Should I take the nodding donkey part back and say Tom's right?
No, I think we're both right.
This is from Scientific American.
ExxonMobil's messaging shifted the blame for warming to consumers.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised about that.
I don't know. I've got names I could call these people, but I'm not going to call them weasels or anything like that on television. It's mean. I don't like being mean. So, as I said, I'm not going to call them nasty names. ExxonMobil Corp has used language systematic, and by the way, that's because I respect the use of language, to systematically shift blame for climate change from the fossil fuel companies onto consumers. According to a paper by researchers at Harvard University, the paper was published in the journal One Earth. Okay, so we advertise how wonderful this product we've got is, and when it turns out that we're killing people by accident, we say, it's not our fault that people bought it.
Exactly. They're taking a playbook from the tobacco industry 20 years ago.
Yes, they are. And, you know, I as I said, I don't like calling names, and, you know, slimy actions like this, I don't call slimy on television because it's just nasty. Maybe they deserve having this whole thing reversed on them.
Well, I can remember when I was a kid reading magazines and seeing a picture of a doctor smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And it would say more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Or
yeah, Old Gold used to have an ad that was not a cough in a carload. I got news for you. You
not
smoke
a carload.
Yeah, you smoke a carload of cigarettes and you're not going to be coughing.
That's great. You're
not going to be breathing.
Well, ExxonMobil is now misleading the public about its history of misleading the public.
Tom, what can we say? All right.
What can we say? We can move along to Monday, May 17th, where we see a whole bunch of funny-looking things on a hill in the background.
Yes, and I have no idea where that picture is. You know, it was
not
from
Vermont.
It was not in Vermont. Well, you know, it doesn't look like Vermont. It also doesn't look like California, but I needed a picture of renewable energy. This article didn't have a good picture of a compressed air thing, so I decided I'd go out and just get something of renewable energy, and here it is. It's funny things. Okay, this is from Energy Matters.
Air compression can be used in the world's largest non-hydro energy storage system.
The world's largest advanced compressed air long-duration energy storage, which is abbreviated to C-CAES, the system is set for construction in California. A Canadian The Canadian company HydroStore has announced that it is developing 2 of these systems, each of which is 500 megawatts and 5 gigawatt hours.
That's a significant size.
Well, 5 megawatts is almost as big as Vermont Yankee nuclear plant was when it first came into gear, and 5 gigawatt hours would be that system running for 10 hours. So this would not quite provide enough energy for Vermont to go through the night and a cold night of a winter, but it would come close.
That's a pretty good. I mean, the gigawatt hours is how long it will last.
Yeah.
It really, it's dependent on the size of the battery.
Yeah. Now, there's a different compressed air system that we're going to be talking about in a couple of minutes. And I want to go on because we can talk more about this when we get to that.
What is a quick rundown of what they're trying to do here?
Yeah.
Surplus energy from renewables powers air compressors, and the air is stored. When
in caverns.
Electricity is required, the air drives turbines.
Yep. The air is stored, in this case, in caverns underground.
Exactly.
And you can do this in salt mines where they have removed the salt with brine. It's a place where it would work very nicely.
Well, we'll get back to that in a couple of seconds. Let's get the next one here.
Okay, our next picture is a picture of the Yallourn power system, which is a power station, which is a coal-burning power plant in Australia.
Victoria.
It's in Victoria, and this
47 years old, and it's about to close.
Yes, and this is from the Mirage News. And what do you have for title?
Coal generators bleeding money as renewables and rooftop solar push the prices down.
Yeah, these companies are in trouble because if they're trying to prop up coal plants, it's not going to work. Revenue for the operators of coal burning power stations have plunged by $5.4 billion as coal use continues to decline. This is impetus for AGL, which burns more coal than any other company in Australia, to bring forward its coal closure timeline. So they're going to close these plants sooner rather than later.
Because they're not making enough money.
They're not making any money. They're losing money. I mean,
this is economics, stupid.
Yeah, keeping these things open is a really bad choice. I mean,
it's political in most cases.
Well, it may be preferable. As I think about it, it may be preferable just to take the money into a public place and burn it.
Well, AGL used to be the Australian Gaslight Company.
Now they're being gaslighted by themselves.
And it's now Australia's largest energy utility. So it's no fly-by-night.
Yep.
It's also Australia's biggest corporate climate polluter.
Yeah. And they're going to have to change because they're being driven out of business. And that's what's going to happen to ExxonMobil and, ConocoPhillips, and you name it. It's just this is the future for fossil fuels, which is about time because they're killing people. Okay, our next item is from Forbes.
Nice picture of a solar array. It says it's from West Virginia.
Yeah, and maybe it is. I'm pretty sure it is because this is an image from Revolt Energy.
Well, there's one just like it up on Western Avenue.
Yeah, I know. But this particular one is from Revolt Industry, which is a West Virginia company.
I can believe that.
What do you have for a title?
The dam has broken, and West Virginia has awoken to solar power.
Yeah. The tight grip the coal industry has on West Virginia is loosening. There's a reason for that. It's because it's losing jobs. Consider the case of Nitro Construction Services. That sounds like a loud company. A provider of electric, mechanical, and technological services. Its roots are in the coal industry, but it is now ramping up its new solar business, which is, by the way, called Revolt Energy.
They're contractors. That's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, West Virginia has been a coal-loving state, as we well know. But the economics of solar power are undeniable. It's no longer 1950.
Yeah, and it's not just solar; it's wind, it's batteries.
Well, developers are now buying reclaimed coal mining sites and putting in large-scale solar farms.
We've talked about that. These are mountaintop removal sites, and the tops of those mountains really, there's the soil on them, if it exists at all, is really thin and poor.
It's just rocks.
Yeah, and so you can develop solar up there, and why not? It's not going to bother anybody to see that the rolling hills whose tops have been removed now have solar panels on the tops.
They're going to make you money. That's what it's all about.
Okay, we are up to Tuesday, May 18th. And we have
a lovely picture of an Impossible Burger.
Yeah, well, Impossible Burger. I wonder how these things taste. I've been told that they don't.
I haven't had one yet. I don't know.
Neither have I. I think you can get them at Burger King. I'm not sure.
I know you could get them somewhere in town.
Yeah.
And it's not McDonald's.
Okay, I would guess Burger King.
Impossible foods to reach a new generation through the U.S. school nutrition programs.
How about that? This is from Clean Technica. The plant-based meat company Impossible Foods has taken another big step on the path to mass adoption of its products. It secured child nutrition labels for its Impossible Burger. They can now be served in U.S. schools as part of the school nutrition programs.
Well, Impossible Foods is trying to replace meat as the protein of choice, totally replacing all animal-based food by 2035, which is probably a good goal.
Well, I don't know that it is a good goal. You know, I'm really I've heard very conflicting reports about this. There was a report. I don't know if we've got it coming up. Oh, we do have it coming up, and we'll talk about it when we get there.
It is today's show?
Yes.
Okay, that's coming quickly.
Yes, it is. So anyway,
let's take a look at a picture of Madrid.
A picture of Madrid. Okay, I'm not altogether happy about Impossible Burgers. I'm not unhappy about them. I'm just I wish I knew more about them so I could make up my mind. These things are not nutritionally identical to beef.
Oh, no, they're not. They're veggie burgers, but
and I know that
they taste like meat.
Yeah, and you know, I think there's reasons why we should reduce the amount of beef we're eating.
Oh,
but,
sure.
You know, anyway, you wanted a picture of Madrid, and there it is. How about that?
How about that?
Isn't that a beautiful?
So fine.
What's
Spain bans new oil and gas exploration as it supercharges renewables.
This I think is kind of fascinating.
Well, they're getting on the bandwagon.
They're going beyond getting on the bandwagon. Let me read the synopsis here. Spain has joined the growing number of European countries banning new oil and gas exploration with far-reaching legislation. It is also prohibiting the sale of fossil fuel vehicles by 2040 and making it illegal to produce fossil fuels in the country from the start of 2043. Now, the way I read that is you can't even sell a used car that burns gas after 2040. And as of 2043, there's going to be no fossil fuel products available except the ones that have been refined abroad. And that is going to shut down fossil fuels in Spain.
Well, Spain wants to supercharge renewable energy production to 74% by 2030.
Yeah.
I think it's doable.
I think that's doable. In fact, I think that they're going to achieve that goal ahead of schedule.
Well, the next sentence says a little bit of it. The country has seen more than 7 gigawatts of solar and 15 gigawatts of wind installed over the past 2 years.
And we're going to see some more activity in Spain before this show is over.
And as we said, gigawatts is bigawatts.
That is correct. Now, should I move on or do you have more?
Well, I got three quick takeaways.
Okay, good.
Denmark is going to end oil and gas production from the North Sea. France has agreed to phase out all fossil fuel production. And Ireland has already outlawed all new on-land and offshore oil and gas exploration.
Yeah.
So Europe is getting with it.
They're getting with it. And the United States is going to be getting with it too very, very soon.
Have to.
Yes, we have to.
Look at that picture here of St. Croix.
Yes. And this is from this article is from Clean Technica.
It is that. The refinery that rained oil, whoa, is to be shut down by the EPA in St. Croix.
Oil is so destructive, and this thing was allowing oil to fall out of the sky. This is just astonishing. Less than 48 hours after an EPA employee sent to the Virgin Islands to investigate the Lime Tree Oil Refinery told his colleagues, quote, "There is oil on my windshield," end quote. The agency took the remarkable action to shut down the entire refinery, citing imminent threat to human health. Now, Tom, have you ever had oil on your windshield?
Yes.
And you turn on your windshield wipers, and what happens?
It streaks all over the place.
Not only does it streak, it dissolves the windshield wipers.
I don't think I've had that much oil.
Well, I've had that happen where the windshield wipers made the streaks black. It was not just streaks. The streaks were black. And, you know, people are going to be breathing this. It's going to come down on plants and kill them. It's going to come down on animals and kill them. This is really destructive. People don't realize how bad oil is. It's just awful in terms of health. And it's, you know, I wanted to find out how much water one drop of oil will pollute. And it turns out that a given volume of oil will pollute approximately 1 million times that volume of water. Wow. And they're just covering the land with this stuff. So yeah, close it down. Holy smokes. This is really dangerous. So all right.
Well, that's how we just talked up to. I think it's Calais.
Yeah.
On the Ohio River.
Yeah. Cheshire.
They've got a smokestack there that's 1,000 feet high. And it brings all that pollution way up in the atmosphere, and it falls on places like Vermont.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But by the time it gets to Vermont, it is also getting to New Jersey and South Carolina and stuff like that. It's all over the place. So it's diluted. It's dispersed. And so people don't really notice it. Up close, you know what's going on, and you realize that this is not good for you know, life.
It doesn't fall in Calais.
Yeah, you're talking about Cheshire, right?
I'm sorry, Cheshire. Yeah, it doesn't fall in Cheshire. Exactly.
Okay. So
I got the first letter right anyhow.
Yeah, you did indeed, and congratulations to you for that. Okay, we have a picture here of a friend of Tom's.
Oh yeah,
this is a person who is enjoying herself, absolutely having just a complete blast. Look at this.
It says yummy.
Yeah, that's right. This old girl is having a great time. And what are you know, I've heard, and I've actually watched cows chewing their cud, and they just look like they're so placid, peaceful. Everything is so dandy, and they seem to enjoy it like mad. This particular item is from CNN. What do you have here?
This supplement can reduce methane in cows and make farmers money at the same time.
This is kind of amazing. We've talked about things added to cows' diets that would reduce the methane, but the things.
It's little granules.
Yeah, in the previous cases that we've talked about things, they were all algae and specific species of algae that grew in specific places. But here,
this isn't exactly algae, but it helps algae.
Well, let me read this, the synopsis. Cattle farming accounts for nearly 10% of all greenhouse gases generated by human activity. Most of that is from methane they produce. But a new feed supplement based on garlic and citrus extracts could reduce those emissions by an average of 30%, according to the makers.
Well, the additives interfere with the microbes in a cow's stomach that make methane.
Yeah.
And methane itself is a product of digesting fibrous plant material like grass.
Yeah. So they're
mix this in with regular cattle feed, and it reduces the methane.
Yeah. So there you go. There it is.
Significantly, the equivalent of about a ton of carbon dioxide per cow per year.
Which is significant. That's more than the cow weighs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We promised to be coming back to compressed air. We've seen this picture before.
Yeah, this is a little bit different. It's not compressed air, it's liquid air.
It's liquid air. They're both, you have to compress the air in this case also.
But that picture looks to me like a printed circuit board.
It almost does, doesn't it? It's, I think it's some sort of model. That's
a model, yeah.
All it can be. This particular article comes from Renews. And what do you have for title?
Highview Power, developing 2 gigawatt hours of a Spanish storage project.
Yeah, Highview Power is developing up to 2 gigawatt hours of long duration liquid air energy storage projects across Spain with an estimated investment of around $1 billion. These projects could enable several Spanish regions to move forward with their net zero emissions target. Now, the Spanish have just been going gangbusters, putting in wind power and solar power and whatever they can to get rid of their fossil fuels.
Figure out how to save this and use it and sell it, use it instead of selling it.
Yeah, and this particular plant, you know, I can guarantee when it's built, those cylinders that are standing on their ends are not going to be shiny like they are here. But this particular plant is not very big. And what it does is it just takes air from the atmosphere, compresses it. Now, if you know anything about physics, you know that if you compress a gas, it gets hot. And if you decompress a gas, it gets cold. So what they do is they compress the gas, it gets hot, then they
let it cool off.
They let it cool off. They put it through a heat exchanger so that instead of being really, really hot, this is just room temperature, and then they decompress it. And it gets cold. It gets so cold that it liquefies.
Right.
They put the liquid into the storage bottles when they need energy. They use the liquid in this. They boil the liquid in the storage bottles, which doesn't require any energy because this is liquid air. It's going to boil at many degrees below zero, right. And they can use that to power turbines.
Long duration energy storage.
That's exactly right. And so they use power. They use electricity when there's too much available and the price is really low. They make electricity when the demand is high and the price is high. They make money on the difference and they help level out the load. And they do this. What's that?
Makes sense to me.
They do this without using lithium or nickel or cobalt. They do it without using vanadium or other, whatever elements or chemicals that are going to be involved. They're just using air. And all of the equipment that is being used to drive this is basically off the shelf.
Well,
so
they call this thing a cryo battery.
Yeah.
And when paired with renewables, these plants are the equivalent in performance to fossil fuel-powered thermal and nuclear baseload power.
Yeah.
It's an option now.
Yeah, this is a real option. And, we were talking about this a year ago. As I said, this is a picture I know we've had up on our show before. When we were talking about this in the past, we were saying, yeah, maybe this would obviously work in theory. Whether it's going to work in the field, we don't know. Now we've got people willing to put $1 billion into these things. Obviously, the prototypes worked, and so they know what the economics of this is. They can use it. They're installing them in Spain. Unlike that earlier power plant that we saw where they were taking air and compressing it in caverns, these things don't need caverns. They can be put up anywhere. So, this is an important movement. And the company that is doing this, I think, has hit a gold mine. Okay, you have more on that?
No, I was just going to say, when you toast your bread in the morning, the toaster doesn't care where that power came from.
That's true enough. Okay, our last item is an offshore oil rig for the picture.
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and these things are not small. I think that oil rig, just guessing, is about 10 stories tall.
I was gonna. We could see like 5 stories on the top of it.
Yeah, above the walkway.
Yeah,
And you can see stairs below the walkway going down. I wonder how many people who live on this thing fish. I'll bet some of them do.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Now on the top,
what else are you going to do? Watch television?
I don't know, but on the top you'll notice that there's a flat roof. That flat roof, I would say, is almost certainly a landing site for helicopters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. This is from Clean Technica. What do you have for title?
Oil and gas exploration and coal plant construction must stop now.
This is from the International Energy Agency, and the International Energy Agency has in the past been accused from time to time of being very much kind of pro-fossil fuels, but this is what it says. The International Energy Agency said in a wide-ranging report that companies must immediately stop exploiting new oil and gas fields and building coal-fired power plants if global temperatures are going to be kept within safe limits.
Well, the executive director of IEA, and this is a quote, with a huge and growing gap between the rhetoric from the governments and the reality, there's no need to invest in a new fossil fuel supply.
Actually, I would go further than that, say it's investing in fossil fuels is just plain foolish at this point. It's going to be, if you develop it now, it is almost guaranteed to be a stranded asset.
Bingo.
And on top of that, it's going to contribute to global warming. And, it's going to destabilize nations. It's going to, the
times they are changing, and we're right in the middle of that change.
They are indeed. And do we have more that we want to tell people about this, Tom? That is the end of our last item.
That's the last of the last of the last.
The last of the last. The last of the best of the blog. Yeah. We do have a final slide which says have a radically nifty week.
I'll try that.
Okay, I think we're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule here. I was pushing for speed in the middle of all of this.
Well, I have nothing that I can rely on to talk about.
Well, we could talk about Bossy saying yum.
About who?
The cow licking its lips.
Yeah.
Her picture is up. Do you want to say hello to her? Okay, let's go back to the radically nifty week. And what we'll do is we'll say to everybody, we're both waving. I guarantee I am. I know Tom is because he's
Absolutely.
Just that kind of guy.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
And what's that?
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Wouldn't miss waving goodbye?
Right.
I wonder when we're going to get back to the studio. Do you have any idea, Tom?
Haven't a clue.
What's that?
I haven't a clue.
Well, you've had your first shot, I think, haven't you?
Yes. Got my second shot in about a week.
In about a week. And I've warned you about that second shot. My second shot, I went through a period that lasted about 5 minutes when I felt like an ice cube.
Yeah,
and
you mentioned that.
I was shivering really hard, but it went away. And I had my second shot, I don't know, it must have been a month ago now. But after you've had your second shot and then had gone through the 2-week period, I think we're probably going to come to the point where we can meet with impunity and maybe not even a plexiglass wall between us, which is what we had from time to time in the past, in the BC TV studio. But they're going to have to open up first, and we'll just see when it comes. And when that happens,
they're not going to do it just for us. So
no, they aren't. But things are.
It's coming.
It's coming. So goodbye, everybody, and we hope to have you back to us soon.